I've been doing this, we've never seen a legislative session end this early. Yeah. Sine die, by the way, you've heard that this week. It means done for now. Let's start with you, Representative. The legislative session's over for now.
It is over for now, and in the 4 years that I've been in the House of Representatives, this is the earliest we've been out by far. But when it became apparent that the majority party wasn't interested in running any more fiscal bills that would help us to put more dollars into the classroom, that would help us put art and science back into elementary schools or music programs back in elementary schools, when that became apparent, and it became also apparent that what they were most interested in running was social bills, it was time for us to end this show, if you will, and get out to the primary elections in June and on to elections in November. And it's disappointing that it ended this way, but it's time for the public to participate in democracy and elect new leaders.
It's apparent to me because I read your tweets. Okay, that's how that works. Speaking of people's tweets I read, Representative, we're done for now. Are we going to stay done?
Yeah, so this is the earliest we've been done that we can find in the last 20 years with a budget with a 10% increase, 20% increase to education. You know, my friend from Oklahoma City talks about not focusing on fiscal matters. Well, that's exactly what we did, dealing with a $70 million corporate giveaway in Senate Bill 888, which was passed strictly by the majority party in the House of Representatives with 0 votes from the minority party. Would have added another $70 million. We'll feel the effects of that in the next few years' budgets. Instead, we decided to give billions to corporations. Well, it was disappointing. We do need to focus on some of the positives. The bottom line is we were done incredibly early, saves taxpayers $30,000 a day with an excellent budget this year.
All right, let's just do best of and worst of. The win, policy-wise, the wins for the legislative session are what?
Well, the two biggest, the number one win is a teacher pay raise. This makes us second in the region, only to Texas. We moved from 48th to 50th in teacher pay, depending upon, way too low is where we moved from, to second in the region, an average of $6,000, over $8,000 for a 25-year teacher, 20% increase to the education budget, and then criminal justice reform. Huge criminal justice reform wins this session. We got all the criminal justice reform bills passed. That should start lowering some of our incarceration rate. This is going to be a long-term process. This is not going to be something that's going to change overnight. But those were two massive wins that occurred this session.
Do you concur?
Yeah, so we can find plenty of things to disagree on, but these two things we absolutely agree on. I think the two biggest wins this session were a teacher pay raise. I'd throw in there a pay raise for state employees and also for support staff in schools. Those were very important. And criminal justice reform, something that we have worked in a bipartisan way on for a number of years now. I was very happy to see that move forward. I'll add one last little piece, a bill that a good friend of mine, Senator Kay Floyd, ran that starts the first process in paid family leave here in Oklahoma. I think it was a big win to get that across the line and have the governor sign.
Well, but they can't all be winners, okay? I like to say that often when we're talking about these sorts of issues. From your perspective, what were the things that didn't happen you're unhappy about?
Yeah, I think this is where my colleague and I are going to disagree on some things. But I think the biggest losses, especially in the last couple of weeks, were this insistence on focusing on social issues. And I think many of us in the building know that a focus on social issues mean that a number of members need campaign material for June primaries. And I just think that it's unfortunate, especially when we are just now recovering as an economy. We're trying to be focused as a state that wants to attract business and not turn them away by running anti-gay bills, running unnecessary gun bills, running the kind of social issue bills that are nothing more than just fodder for a campaign, but don't actually help us grow as a state. And it was really sad to see.
The social issues the last week really did overwhelm the news. But from a standpoint of the entire 4-month session, what do you think were the worst things that didn't happen?
Well, there were a lot of other wins I didn't even get to talk about, so I'm going to talk about some wins and some losses. You had a bipartisan hemp bill with myself and Democrat Representative Mickey Dolans from South Oklahoma City, which was excellent. It was a huge win. A loss was not putting in regulations in case 788 passes, which could cause a special session. The House passed those regulations. They didn't pass the Senate. A win was the $2 million through a bipartisan waiting list caucus that went into the waiting list. That's the most that's gone in the last 20 years to the waiting list. Frankly, another loss is we still have the longest waiting list for the developmentally disabled community in the nation. I spent last Friday in a special education classroom, Ms. Renaud's classroom in Yukon, and it's a loss that we didn't get more done. I mean, there's more left to be done. There were lots of wins, but there's more to do.
All right, now we know what's about to happen here at the end of June. You just referenced the medical marijuana election, which could impact you guys coming back to town, perhaps. But from a standpoint of shifting from policy to politics, what's next?
Well, the elections are coming up, so primaries are coming up in a couple months, and then the elections in November. We're heading into campaign season. This is the time where politicians should be out defending why they did what they did. That's what I've always said. As a member of the legislature, you're paid at the end of the day to cast a yes or a no. You don't get to cast a maybe. Then you go back to your constituents and you explain why you stood for whatever it is that you stood for. And as both sides of the aisle go do that, I think we passed the alcohol modernization bill we needed. I don't anticipate a special session having to come up. I think it's going to be campaign season coming on down the pike.
Unless, of course, the medical marijuana thing happens, which we'll know out end of June. What do you think is next? What is the most important prism you're looking through?
Well, yeah, June 26th are primaries, and I think elections are the things that everything is moving toward right now. And my colleague had talked about how we need to go and defend the things that we've done through the session. On top of that, I'd like to add that we need to go and cast a vision for what we want for our future. We have spent too much time looking at our past and not enough time looking at our future. Who are the people that you want to send to the Capitol in order to make the decisions that will make the best future for you? And what are those issues that are important to you? I know for me, it's making sure that we're putting investment in core services of government, that we're investing in our children, and that we're making sure that we have the best opportunity for a future that's better than our past.
Politics 2018, and we're off. See this again at news9.com/your vote counts.
And I am looking